"Good morning, beautiful," David whispered, kissing my forehead as I pretended to still be asleep. I heard him padding around our bedroom, getting ready for another day at the law firm. 5 more minutes, I mumbled into my pillow. "Your coffee's brewing. I set it to finish in 10 minutes. His voice was soft, considerate, always thinking of me first. I opened my eyes as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. 5 years of marriage, and he still looked at me like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. "Big case today?" I asked, stretching. "The Morrison merger. Should wrap up by noon, then I'm all yours for lunch if you want." I should have said yes. Should have jumped at the chance to spend time with this man who moved his entire schedule around me. "I'll probably be swamped with the Henderson campaign," I said instead. "Rain check?" His face fell for just a second before he recovered. "Of course. You're going to crush that presentation." After he left, I sat in our kitchen drinking the perfect coffee he'd made me, staring at the flowers he'd brought home yesterday, white roses, my favorite, just because it was Tuesday. Our house was everything we'd dreamed of when we were broke newlyweds. Granite countertops, hardwood floors, a garden. David maintained himself because he knew I loved coming home to something beautiful. But sitting there in my silk pajamas, surrounded by evidence of how much I was loved, all I could think about was how restless I felt, how predictable everything had become. "You're an idiot," I said aloud to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Hope your day is amazing. Love you more than coffee loves mornings." I stared at the message, feeling something twist in my chest. When had his sweetness started feeling suffocating instead of romantic? When had I started taking his devotion for granted? I didn't know it then, but I was already looking for an excuse to throw it all away. The doorbell rang while I was in the middle of a video call with my team about the Henderson account. Rain was hammering against the windows, and I was wearing David's old Northwestern sweatshirt, my hair in a messy bun. "Sorry guys, someone's at the door," I said, muting my microphone. I opened it to find a man about my age holding a soggy package, his delivery uniform soaked through. He was tall, with dark hair, and eyes that seemed to take in everything about me in one glance. "Package for the Hernandez family," he said, his voice deeper than I'd expected. "I think I have the wrong house." "They're next door, the blue one," I said, pointing. "You're pretty soaked." He grinned, water dripping from his hair. "Occupational hazard. I'm Marcus, by the way. I cover this route regularly, so you'll probably see me around." Something about the way he said it made my stomach flutter. "I'm Sarah." "Sarah." He repeated my name like he was testing how it sounded. "Beautiful garden, by the way. You take care of it yourself?" I felt heat creep up my neck. "My husband does, actually. He's got the green thumb." "Lucky guy," Marcus said, but his eyes stayed on mine. "Well, I should get this delivered before it dissolves completely." After he left, I stood in the doorway longer than I should have, watching him jog through the rain to the Hernandez house. There was something about his confidence, the easy way he'd smiled at me, that made me feel suddenly aware of my appearance. I went back to my meeting, but I kept thinking about how he'd looked at me, like I was someone worth noticing, worth remembering. When David came home that night, he was carrying takeout from Romano's. "Thought you might be too tired to cook," he said, kissing my cheek. "How was your day?" "Fine," I said, though I realized I'd been checking the window all afternoon, wondering if any more packages would arrive. "How was the Morrison thing?" "Wrapped up early, thought about surprising you for lunch, but I didn't want to interrupt if you were busy." He was always like that, thoughtful, considerate, putting my needs before his own. As he set the table and told me about his day, I nodded and smiled, but part of my mind was still replaying that moment at the door. "Another package?" David asked 3 weeks later, seeing me sign for yet another delivery. "Just some face cream I needed," I lied, clutching the box I'd ordered purely to see Marcus again. "You sure you're not developing a shopping addiction?" David teased, kissing my forehead. "Not that I mind. You work hard, you should treat yourself." If only he knew what I was really treating myself to. Marcus had started timing his deliveries for when David was at work. Our conversations grew longer each time, and I found myself looking forward to them with an anticipation that should have terrified me. Business school at night, delivery during the day, he'd told me earlier that week. It's not glamorous, but I'm saving up to open my own restaurant. What kind of restaurant? I'd asked, genuinely interested. Italian. My grandmother's recipes. She always said I had the passion for it, just needed the business sense to make it work. The way his eyes lit up when he talked about his dreams was intoxicating. Unlike David's careful, methodical approach to everything, Marcus was spontaneous, passionate about the future in a way that made me feel like I'd forgotten how to dream. You ever feel like you're sleepwalking through your own life? He asked one afternoon, leaning against our doorframe. I should have shut down the conversation right there. Instead, I heard myself saying, "Every day." That's a shame, he said, his voice soft. Someone like you should be living, not just existing. After he left, I stood in my hallway, my heart racing. I knew I was playing, with fire, but the way Marcus looked at me, like I was fascinating, desirable, had awakened something I'd forgotten existed. That night, David found me staring out the kitchen window. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "Just thinking about work stuff," I said, leaning into him even as guilt gnawed at me. "You've seemed distracted lately. Everything okay?" I turned in his arms, looking at his concerned face. This man who loved me completely, who would do anything to make me happy. "I'm fine," I lied, "just tired." But I wasn't fine. I was becoming addicted to feeling wanted by someone new, someone who didn't know all my flaws and love me anyway. I wanted to be mysterious again, desirable, someone worth chasing. I was already gone, even though I didn't know it yet. "I'll be late tonight," David said, kissing me goodbye. "Client dinner with the Hartwell group. Probably won't be home until 10. "Okay," I said, my stomach already knotting with anticipation and dread. I'd been having headaches all week from the stress of the Henderson campaign, and I'd decided to work from home. I was in yoga pants and one of David's old t-shirts when the doorbell rang at 2 o'clock. Marcus stood there with a small package, but his smile faded when he saw my face. "Hey, you okay? You look upset." "Just a rough morning," I said, but something in his voice, the genuine concern, broke something open in me. "Actually, no. I'm not okay." "Want to talk about it?" I should have said no. Should have thanked him and closed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. "Come in, just for a minute." He hesitated. "You sure? Please, I could use someone to talk to." We sat on my couch, the same couch where David and I watched movies every weekend, where he'd proposed 3 years earlier. "I feel invisible," I heard myself saying. "Like I'm disappearing in my own life. My husband is amazing, but sometimes I feel like he sees the version of me he wants to see, not who I actually am." Marcus leaned closer. "That's his loss. You're incredible, Sarah. Any man who can't see that doesn't deserve you." "You don't even know me," I whispered. "I know enough," he said, reaching out to touch my face. "I know you're beautiful, intelligent, passionate about things that matter. I know you deserve to feel seen." When he leaned in to kiss me, every rational thought in my head screamed at me to stop. Instead, I kissed him back with a desperation that came from some broken, selfish place inside me. "Are you sure?" he whispered against my lips. I should have said no. Should have remembered David, our marriage, the life we'd built together. Instead, I pulled Marcus closer. 20 minutes later, it was over, and the weight of what I'd done crashed down on me like a physical blow. "Sarah," Marcus started. "You need to leave," I said, not able to look at him. "Please, just go." "I don't regret this," he said softly. "I hope you won't either." After he left, I sat alone on our couch, staring at the cushions that would forever remind me of my betrayal. I'd thrown away the best thing in my life for 20 minutes of feeling wanted by a stranger. And the worst part? For those 20 minutes, I had felt alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. David came home at 10:30 with soup from my favorite deli. Thought this might help with your headache, he said, kissing the top of my head. I couldn't meet his eyes. Thank you. You feeling better? He sat beside me on the couch, our couch, and I had to fight not to flinch. A little, I lied. Good. I hated thinking about you suffering while I was stuck in that meeting. He pulled me closer, and every cell in my body screamed with guilt. Want me to run you a bath? I'm okay, I whispered. That night, I lay awake beside him, memorizing his peaceful face, knowing I'd destroyed everything good between us. David slept the sleep of someone who trusted completely, who had no idea his world had shifted off its axis. The next morning, he brought me coffee in bed. Sleep better? He asked, concern creasing his forehead. Much better, I lied again. Over the next few days, David continued being perfect while I fell apart. He texted me funny memes during his lunch breaks, planned a weekend getaway to the bed and breakfast where we'd spent our first anniversary, even suggested we start trying for the baby we'd talked about. I know work's been stressful, he said one evening, pulling me into his arms, but maybe it's time we started our family. What do you think? The question hit me like a physical blow. How could I bring a child into a marriage I'd already poisoned? Maybe we should wait until things calm down at work, I said. When Marcus came by with another delivery, I hid upstairs and let David answer the door. Nice guy, David said when he came back up. Asked how you were feeling, said he hoped your headache was better. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. Marcus left a note in the package. Are you okay? Can we talk? I tore it up and flushed it down the toilet, but even that felt like another betrayal. Another secret I was keeping from the man who loved me. The worst part wasn't the guilt. It was watching David love me exactly the same way he always had, completely trusting and devoted, while I carried this poisonous secret that was eating me alive from the inside. You've been different lately, David said one morning over breakfast. Distracted. Are you okay? Just work stress, I said, the lie coming easier now. Maybe you should take some time off. We could go somewhere warm, just the two of us. Each suggestion felt like torture. How could I sit on a beach with this man, pretending everything was fine? I can't leave right now. The Henderson campaign. Sarah. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm worried about you. You're not sleeping. You're barely eating. Talk to me. I pulled my hand away. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I was jumping every time the phone rang, checking the Ring doorbell obsessively, terrified that somehow David would find out. I'd stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped being able to concentrate on anything. My work performance suffered. My boss, Janet, called me into her office. The Henderson presentation was not your best work, she said gently. Is everything okay at home? Everything's fine, I said automatically. My sister Jessica noticed too. You sound terrible, she said during our weekly call. What's going on? Nothing, just tired. But David's patience was the worst torture of all. When I snapped at him for leaving dishes in the sink, he apologized and hugged me. What can I do to help? He asked. Just tell me what you need. When I turned away from his kisses, he assumed I was tired and brought me tea instead. That delivery? Guy asked about you again, David mentioned casually one evening. Marcus, seems like a nice kid, said he hoped you were feeling better. The panic attack lasted 3 hours. I started imagining that Marcus would tell David that neighbors had seen us, that the truth would come out in the most humiliating way possible. Every day became a minefield of potential discovery. The woman David had married was disappearing, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, paranoid, guilty, destroying her marriage from the inside out. David still believed we were just going through a rough patch. He had no idea his wife had already given up on their marriage the moment she let another man touch her. Surprise, David said, walking into the kitchen with a huge grin. I made us reservations at Bistro Noir for tonight. Anniversary dinner, redo. My stomach dropped. David, and I got tickets to see Luna Bay. I know they're your favorite. He was so excited, so hopeful. I thought we could use a night to reconnect. Looking at his face, so full of love and hope, something inside me finally shattered. That sounds wonderful, I heard myself saying. That evening, Sitting across from him at the restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary, David reached across the table and took my hand. "I know things have been tough lately," he said softly, "but I love you more than ever. We can get through anything together." The words that should have comforted me felt like acid in my ears. "David," I said, pulling my hand away, "I need to tell you something." His face changed from loving concern to growing alarm. "What is it?" The words stuck in my throat. "How do you destroy someone's world in a restaurant?" "Sarah, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" "I cheated on you," I whispered. The color drained from his face. "What?" 3 weeks ago, with Marcus, the delivery guy." Each word felt like a knife I was twisting in his chest. He sat in complete silence for what felt like hours. Other diners continued their conversations around us, completely unaware that I was destroying the best man I'd ever known. "In our house?" he finally asked, his voice barely audible. "On our couch." His face crumpled. "Do you love him?" "No," I said immediately. "Then why?" The pain in his voice was unbearable. "Why would you throw away everything we have for someone you don't even love?" I had no answer that wouldn't sound selfish and pathetic. We drove home in complete silence. David went straight to the guest room and closed the door. I sat on our couch, the scene of my crime, and cried until I had nothing left. The next morning, I found David's wedding ring on the kitchen counter next to a note. "I'll be staying at Tom's while I figure out what to do next." Just like that, my marriage was over, destroyed by 20 minutes of selfishness that I would regret for the rest of my life. The house felt like a tomb without David. His coffee mug sat unwashed in the sink. His pillow still held the indent from the last night he'd slept in our bed. My phone rang constantly. David's lawyer, my sister, my mother asking why David had moved in with his brother. "I can't talk about it right now," I kept saying. Jessica showed up at my door on the 3rd day. "What the hell happened?" she demanded. "Tom won't tell me anything except that you and David are separated." I broke down and told her everything. When I finished, she stared at me like I was a stranger. "You had everything," she said quietly. "David worshipped you. Why would you throw that away?" "I don't know," I sobbed. "I don't know. That's not an answer." "Sarah, that's not even close to an answer." Marcus tried calling several times. I blocked his number and changed our delivery preferences. He represented everything I hated about myself, the selfishness, the weakness, the capacity for betrayal I never knew I had. David's lawyer called to discuss next steps. Hearing those clinical words applied to our marriage made me physically ill. I quit my job because I couldn't function, couldn't concentrate on anything except the magnitude of what I'd lost. "Mrs. Richardson called," Jessica said during one of her visits. "She asked how you were doing. The whole neighborhood knows David moved out." I destroyed not just my marriage, but David's reputation, his sense of home, his ability to trust. All for what? 20 minutes of feeling desired by a stranger? "He was perfect," I whispered. "He was perfect, and I destroyed him." "No," Jessica said firmly. "You destroyed yourself. David will recover from this. He'll find someone who deserves him. But you have to live with what you did forever." She was right. I'd had everything. A man who loved me completely, a marriage that was solid and real, a future that was secure and happy. And I'd destroyed it all because I was bored, because I wanted to feel desired by someone new, because I was too selfish to appreciate what I had until it was gone. "I want to understand why you did it," Dr. Sarah Chen said during our first therapy session. "Not to excuse it, but to help you understand yourself." David had filed for divorce. I didn't contest it. The legal process was clean, fair. David was generous about everything, which somehow made it hurt worse. "Your affair wasn't about Marcus," Dr. Chen explained. "It was about your fear of vulnerability, of being truly known and loved." "That doesn't make sense," I said. "David knew me better than anyone." "Did he? Or did he know the version of yourself you felt safe showing him?" Through months of painful sessions, I began to understand the broken parts of myself that had led to that moment. My pattern of self-sabotage when things got too comfortable. My need for external validation. My inability to sit with contentment without creating chaos. You were running from the responsibility of being truly loved, Dr. Chen said, because being loved completely means accepting that you have the power to hurt someone deeply. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women rebuild after making devastating mistakes. Their stories, abuse, addiction, poor choices, helped me realize that while my betrayal was inexcusable, it didn't make me irredeemable. I threw away my marriage for a man I didn't even know, I told Sarah, a woman whose husband had left her after she'd relapsed. But now you know who you are, she replied, and you can make sure it never happens again. I went back to school to become a counselor. Maybe I could help other people avoid the mistakes I'd made. Through mutual friends, I heard David was dating Amanda, a paralegal from his firm. She was kind, stable, everything I should have been, but wasn't mature enough to appreciate. I'm happy for him, I told Dr. Chen, and meant it. He deserves someone who won't throw his love away. The work was exhausting, often hopeless feeling, but slowly, I began rebuilding myself from the ground up. 2 years after my divorce was finalized, I sat in my small apartment, reading David's wedding announcement in the local paper. Amanda looked radiant, kind, exactly what he deserved. How does that make you feel, my Clia? Aunt Maria asked during our session that afternoon. She'd seen the paper too. Sad, I admitted, but genuinely happy for him. He deserves love from someone worthy of it. I'd learned that redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about becoming someone worthy of the love you threw away, even if you never get it back. My new life was smaller, quieter, focused on helping others rather than chasing my own desires. I specialized in counseling people who'd made relationship-destroying mistakes, and I was good at it because I understood the specific hell of knowing you'd hurt someone who didn't deserve it. The guilt never goes away completely, I told clients, but you can learn to carry it in a way that makes you better, not bitter. Sometimes I drove by our old house, sold now to a young couple who probably had no idea about the heartbreak that had happened in those rooms. I'd made peace with the fact that I'd never stop missing David, never stop regretting the moment I chose temporary excitement over permanent love. But the person I was now, scarred, wiser, committed to helping others avoid my mistakes, might actually be someone worth knowing. Do you think you'll ever love again? Dr. Chen had asked during our last session. Maybe, I'd said. But if I do, it'll be with someone who knows exactly who I am, including my capacity for selfishness and betrayal. And I'll love them with the wisdom I was too immature to have with David. The cost of becoming this person was everything I held dear, but maybe that was the only way I could have learned to truly value love when I find it again. I still lived with the consequences of 20 minutes that destroyed everything, but I'd learned to make those consequences count for something, to help others avoid the same devastating mistakes, to understand the true weight of love and commitment, to never again take for granted the gift of someone's complete trust. David had remarried, moved on, found happiness with someone who deserved him, and I was genuinely glad, because loving someone, truly loving them, means wanting their happiness even when it doesn't include you. That was a lesson I'd learned too late to save my marriage, but not too late to save myself.